I got done and what the RS feeder's looking like, but I am soaked right through. I've had all the tools out. Which is the actual best fish feeder on the market? I don't know. Just hit the button to where you want it to go, feeding on and off. I've actually got the RS feeder. I just wanted to add that they play a massive part of fish keeping. It is a little bit of an eyesore, I'm not gonna lie. It's also got a couple of lights on the top. A cheaper budget type of fish feeder. That's quite a cool little feature. Bit of equipment to go with it. Looks like Mrs. Whisperer's got me a nice cup of tea. They do overhang a man's 2 inches, do you know what I mean? She's up and she's singing and she's a dancing. Slotted in perfectly AM in the morning, and it turns itself off at 7:02. And you can see it ain't just raining, it is absolutely bucketing it down. Hello everyone, welcome back. James the Koi Whisperer. And today we're talking about fish feeders. What fish feeder do you use? What fish feeder am I using? And a new fish feeder that I've just recently purchased. So stick around for this video. Hopefully it's interesting. Which is the actual best fish feeder on the market? I don't know. Which fish feeder do you use? Write it down in the comment section. Let me know how you get on with it, because I've pretty much tried and tested pretty much all of them. Is there benefits from different types, different ones? I don't know. Hopefully you can enjoy this video. That's enough yibbity yabbada. Let's just crack right on into it. So I just wanted to start off the video by saying, do you need a fish feeder? Does a fish feeder play any benefits? Well, one advantage that I've found over the years is that having a fish feeder, an automatic fish feeder, it certainly does help with feeding your fish when a lot of us with our 9 to 5s are at work, and it's surprising how much food a koi actually needs over a day to actually start developing any growth. It does play a massive benefit having a fish feeder. Is it necessary? Well, if you're that hardcore hobbyist that you've got a lot of time on your hands and you get out every day in the morning, you feed your fish, you feed them at lunchtime, and then you feed them straight after you get home from work, and then you feed them every day before you go to bed, especially throughout the growing season, 4 times a day really isn't enough feeding going into a pond. You're better off feeding smaller amounts on a regular basis. And I've found over the years there's only one way to do that, and that's have an automatic fish feeder, because it's a bit of equipment that's on your side. It gives you that little bit of an advantage. And one thing I've found the most is that building up a feeding regime, especially for your biological media to handle the amount of food that you're putting in, it doesn't happen overnight. And it takes a few weeks or a few months even to start slowly increasing the amount of food that you want to put into your pond. You can't just start by, for instance, I want to put 500 grams of food in today, and tomorrow I'm going to put 500 grams of food in. You've got to slowly build up to that 500 gram mark, day at a time, or sometimes to be in fact week at a time. So having an automatic fish feeder where you can regulate the amount of food that's going to the pond certainly does help in this hobby. And there's bound to be people out there that's wondering why you can't just dump 500 grams of fish food into a brand new pond straight away. Well, that reason is because of ammonia spikes and water quality. You can have the best water in the world, but if you overfeed your fish and you put in, say, 2 or 3 times more than what you normally do, you haven't got the biological bacteria built up on your filter media to handle that extra feed going into the pond pretty much. So you'll only be able to ever keep beneficial bacteria for the amount of food that's going in, because anything else, it won't survive and thrive. It will only ever handle the amount of food that's going in, and you only ever build up enough beneficial bacteria for the amount of food going in, if that makes sense. So my top tip advice is that you're better to put food in smaller amounts on a regular basis, so then your filters can handle what you're putting in, and then over time you can add extra to those smaller amounts and build up to the amount where you need to be for how much food that you want to be feeding your fish. But like any hobby, it's really tricky to work out which fish feeder is the right one for you to go with, because there's so many out there on the market, and it's a bit of an head banger really, knowing which one to pick or which one is best for you. A lot of it comes down to budget, because there's so many different types out there available on the market. There is such a different budget line between each and every one of them. So I've had a few, and I've got a few, and I just wanted to run through some of the ones that I'm using. So a lot of people know this is my main pond. This is my pride and joy. I absolutely love it. When I built this pond, I actually invested in a JBL fish feeder. So it's an automatic fish feeder. It feeds up to 24 times a day. It's solar panelled, so it doesn't have to be plugged in. These retail roughly around the £300 to £350 mark, depending where you purchase it from. The cheapest I've ever seen them is £285 on a sale price weekend. I've had no faults with mine whatsoever. I have heard that there's been a lot of people out there that's had problems with them when they put them on the side of the pond, that they get water damage. I've been lucky with mine because I put a roof over the top of my pond. I've never actually had this plugged in. I've always ever used it by the solar panel. But what I've done, I've popped it out and put it on display for you so you can see it. Downsides behind this fish feeder that I've found over the years is that it's a big bulky item. It's all right if you sort of tuck it in a corner and hide it. It is a little bit of an eyesore, I'm not going to lie. The benefits behind it is that the solar panel works incredibly well. The downsides about it, because I've got it undercover, I'm only getting a few hours solar panel charging time on it, which throughout the summer I have no issues with it whatsoever. It does come with a plug, which you can manually plug it in all of the time, so you don't actually have to run it off of the solar panel. That's a bit more of an advantage, but the downsides behind this is that it's something else that you have to plug in, find a plug for. It does come with a decent amount of cable. All of my plugs are in the filter house over there, and this cable just isn't long enough. So what I do this time of the year, I just charge it up. I'll show you how to charge it up nice and easy, and I'll just run that inside of the house. This is a EU plug. In the UK, we need to convert this EU plug back to our standard sort of 3-pin head plug. What I find is that it just makes it so long to try to convert that into an outside plug socket, and you can't seal it down. So in theory, this needs to be housed inside. This is the downside, what I mean. If you've got this an outside plug socket like a lot of us koi keepers or fish keepers do, outside to the open of the elements, like I've got over there on this pond, where you can seal down these units, the way that this plug's designed, you just can't seal this plug down, and that's not safe for water elements and stuff. But the benefits with this fish feeder, which I really do like, you can set and program the amounts of fish food that you want to feed, how much each day that you want to feed, the times, up to 24 times a day. I really do like this fish feeder. One advantage with this fish feeder that it houses 10 kilos of food as well. The only downsides that I've had with this fish feeder is that the solar panel this time of year isn't enough to keep out the amount of times that I want to feed myself personally. It's also got a couple of lights on the top, which lets you know when the fish feeder is getting low and needs refilling. It's come with a little space for your charger to sit and live inside of there if you want to keep it inside and get it out as and when you need to charge it. It has also got the charging adapter points there with a tiny little sealed unit in around here, so when the lid's shut, the cable itself, it's got a little place for the cable to come out of, so no actual water gets into the fish food itself. And overall, the JBL fish feeder, in my eyes, is a decent fish feeder. It does retail around the £300 mark. This ain't a sales video. This is me telling you what's what down to a point. Is it worth the money? And to be honest with you, look at the weather today. There's no sun, even solar panels on your house. In the winter time, anything solar, that it gets affected. So sometimes that you do need to use that manual charge. The only downside for me is that manual charge, the plug itself, is that it needs to be indoors. You cannot fit that outside because you're just asking for problems doing it that way. So after reviewing the JBL water feeder, I've got to give it a scores on the doors. I'm going to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10, just down to the performance that I've experienced over the past 3 years. I can't fault it too much apart from the solar panel itself. Can't handle the battery life for how many times a day I'm feeding, but I'm still sticking with an 8.5, happy days. Now we're going to move on to a sort of a cheaper budget type of fish feeder, and I'm just going to show you the downsides, what I've experienced by me owning this one personally. We're using this on our grow on pond at the moment, but I just want to run through a few things with this fish feeder real quickly, just to tell you what I've experienced with this one. It's a Pond Expert fish feeder. It retails roughly around the £120 mark, thereabouts, £100–120 depending where you buy it from. I've had no sort of major faults with it, but the things that I have experienced with it is that it only feeds 6 times a day, which is more than enough, but the amounts of food that you can set for it to feed is what I've experienced in a small pond. I thought I'd do the review over here just because the lighting's a little bit better. I just wanted to run through a few of the advantage points on it again. So on the top, it's got a solar panel. I've had no issues with this solar panel keeping it charged. I do believe that's down because where I normally have it sat, it gets full sunlight, and I'm only actually feeding twice a day with this fish feeder now, for the main reason being it just dishes out too much food even on its lowest setting possible. Benefits that I've found with the feeder itself: it looks smart, it looks tidy on the pond, you can see visually through the feeder itself to let you know how much food is actually in the feeder, when it needs topping up, etc. I do like the idea of the size comparison compared to like other fish feeders on the market. One thing I have noticed with this fish feeder is that there's a lot of other brands out there that use the same base model as what this is. Evolution Aqua, I believe, uses exactly the same function unit. The downsides, like I said, even on the smallest setting possible, it just dishes out too much food. And if you're like me, if you're the type of person that likes feeding smaller amounts on a regular basis, instead of just dumping in all of the food in the morning and then all of the food in the evening, just sort of that twice a day koi keeper, then this might be the fish feeder for you. Down to the budget of it as well. It's cheap, it's affordable. The downsides behind this fish feeder, what I've experienced myself personally, in a small grow-on pond like what I'm using behind me, I would rather feed these fish every sort of hour or every 2 hours to get them to keep looking for food than just once a day, or sort of twice a day should I say. And then it's a long period of time in that time frame where in theory your filters are not doing anything, and it's a lot of food at once for your filters to sort of handle the amount of food that's going in. So those ammonia spikes throughout the day, you might have a big amount going in, spiking it up and then gradually pulling it back down to normal. Well, I'm the type of koi keeper that likes keeping it across the line steady all day. So that is the only downsides that I found with that feeder. But overall, the feeder itself, it handles a decent amount of food. I'm not sure exactly, I think it's around 3 kilos of fish food that this feeder holds, which is more than enough. The only downsides, like I said, that I can find with the item itself is that the amount of food that it dishes out on its lowest setting possible is just a little bit, it's a little bit much for my likings. And I do know people that's emailed me and sent me videos of customizing a little bracket at the bottom of the fish feeder that spins the food out, so you can convert that and you can manually make something yourself so it doesn't dish out as much food when it's spinning or rotating to get rid of the food in your pond. For the average koi keeper, if you're paying for an item to start with, that function really is a bit of a add-on, something that you would have to do yourself manually. So do I recommend that to everyone? For the money, if it's something that you can do yourself, if you wanted to, the option is there. And overall, for the money, the size of the unit, what the fish feeder does, I'm going to give that a solid 7.5 out of 10, down to performance, cost and the way it looks. That leads us on to the second part of this video really, where I've actually purchased myself a new fish feeder. The 2 feeders that I'm using currently on both of my ponds, I'm going to take you inside my filter house because I haven't actually done an unboxing of this feeder yet. Basically, I'm going to give you a little bit of a review. Let's go inside the filter house and have a look because it's wet out here. Right then, so as you can see in front of you, I've actually got the RS feeder. I've heard nothing but good things about this feeder, so I thought myself personally, I'm going to get it, give it a go myself and see how I get on with it and how it performs. If you've joined me here in the filter house once again, I'm only in here because it's peeing down with rain out there. So I recently purchased this RS fish feeder. I'll leave all the links down in the comment section if you are interested. There is a discount code of 10%. It's not a cheap item, I'm going to be dead honest with you. It's expensive, it's one of the sort of higher end sort of fish feeders. The reasons behind that, I think it's all made out of stainless steel. We're going to get through all of that in a minute. The fish feeder itself, looks very impressive. It looks nice and neat and tidy on a pond. And if you like that little bit of bling behind your pond, a bit of stainless steel, this might be the fish feeder for you. It does retail in at 449 quid, which is expensive for a fish feeder. There's certain things that you can get for this fish feeder that sort of makes it stand out compared to others, I suppose, but that does come at a cost. So I actually bought the bracket as well. So this doesn't come supplied with the item. You have to purchase this extra. Inside of the box, what you get, not really sure what that is, but we'll work out what this little thing is in a minute. That's the fish feeder itself. Comes with a lid, all stainless steel. Not sure the grade of the stainless steel yet. I will find out. It looks like the motor's in the very bottom of it. Maybe that's what that cover's for, to go over the motor. I will have a look at the instructions in a minute. Box section, stainless steel. Looks very nice, neat and tidy. You just add the lid on, refill the fish food. It looks like this is the control panel unit. Instructions on the side. It looks like a basic timer, to be fair. Timer itself, I'll have to get in detail and have a look of how all this works. All the instructions on the side of the box. Comes supplied with the plug to run the unit itself. Also comes supplied with your fixing units, with your Allen keys and every bit that you need to keep this unit put together pretty much. I do believe it looks like this little cover slip goes over the motor itself. You just sort of slide that over the motor. As you can see, that little cover slip just sits over the end of the motor itself, and I believe that's just to protect the motor. On the propeller line at the bottom, the amount of fish food that it dishes out, it does look like you can quite easily set it with the wing nut in here. So like I was saying a minute ago about adjusting the amount of food that's coming out of the item, that this looks very straightforward just to adjust the amount of food that it actually puts into your pond. So you can just set the depth. If you're only using like a 2mm pellet or a very fine pellet and you only want a real small amount going into your pond, that's something that this fish feeder is capable of doing. You can adjust the height on the hopper to allow for that as well. So it looks like you've got a decent amount of cable to actually get this system up and running. You can house this inside in a filter shed if you wish. You can close it up outside if you wish to keep it outside. Fixing points on the back. It does look like the size of the plug is an English plug 3-head pin socket, which will easily be able to sit inside of one of these units behind you and close it up if you do want to keep it outside. One thing I wanted to add real quickly, I do like the idea of this. You just feed the cable down the bar itself. Little bit tricky to get it down there, I suppose, I'm not going to lie. I quite like the idea of it all being nice and neat and tidy, sealed inside of the unit, and there's ample room for the cable to be hid in behind the back. So in theory, all you see at the cable itself is in behind the back of the extra add-on bracket as well. That's quite a cool little feature. So one thing I want to add real quickly, just to show you if anyone else does purchase this. I was battling my brains a minute ago because this is the screws that come provided. I was trying to get them pinned in from this side because this bracket's got a screw thread in it. And I was thinking to myself, the diameter of what this is, the screw thread's not enough to pin it down, if you know what I mean. Got to put these in from the inside. So you got to put your hand right up inside of her. Find where the hole is from the inside. Little bit tricky, not going to lie. Once you get it set up, you'll never have to do it again. And it does come supplied with an Allen key as well. So you can just get that final little tighten on. It does come supplied with your fixing points down here as well. Bolt this to the pond wall. I've had my moving bed off for a little bit of time now, just so I can get a good sound for you guys. That being said, we're all set and ready to go now really for the fixing points to get this on the pond. Just crack on with it. And I for one has certainly been cracking on with it. I'm like a drowned rat here today. But let me show you what I got done, what the RS feeder's looking like. But I am soaked right through. The dedication what I do for you guys to show you what's what. And yeah, I just loves my job. Look out now then. Right, so I've had all the tools out. The Makita's been going. The DeWalt's been going. I've made a bit of a mess to be fair. But she's up. And she's singing and she's a dancing. So I got to be honest, I am well impressed with how it looks. The tidiness, how neat and tidy the cable runs, slotted in perfectly. What I'm going to do is get this put in place. I've left myself a little bit of flex, so then when I do silicone up all of my joints, something that I still have got yet to finish, I've also going to make a new temporary sort of cover for the pond, because it's getting to that time of year where that other one, to be fair with you, I don't really like anyway. So that there's come off the pond, which has allowed me to get this RS feeder up, sat in situ, and it does look very impressive. It looks nice and smart. I'm happy with it. The fish has had absolutely loads of food, because what I want to show you, the control panel. So first inspections, reading all of this yibbity yabbada, I was getting a bit confused. And it's simple, so easy to use. This, to be honest, is the most easiest timer that I've ever used once you know how to use it. So all you do with this timer, you set the time of the day just by hitting clock, adjust your hours, your minutes, your seconds. Then what you do, you hit your timer button, and what that does, it tells you your first feed starts at 7 AM in the morning, and it turns itself off at 7:02. So in effect, you can fine tune these feeders right down to 1 second of feeding. And what it allows you to do, you continue the cycle right up through until you get to feed sort of 28 times a day if you wish to. I mean, but as straightforward as feeding at 7 o'clock in the evening, and it will shut itself down 2 seconds after it's been feeding. And then the rest of the settings, I'm not feeding anymore for that. And you just blip it all the way through to the very end till you get to 28, and it's pretty much an on-off. So you start feeding and then you stop feeding. It's a really, really good, easy design. I like it. I'm impressed with it. And one other thing that it's got as well, it's got a clear button. So if you ever make a mistake and you want to reset the whole thing, the whole clock, you just hit the clear button. That resets everything on the RS feeder. But what it does do as well, it's sat on auto at the moment, so that means it's on the feeding time. You can turn it on, which will manually chuck out food to the pond. You can turn it off, back to auto, and that will switch the feeder off. And then you can also turn it off completely if you wish to. So if you just want to chuck a little bit of food into your pond without actually putting your hand in to get yourself a handful of pellets, just hit the button to where you want it to go, feeding on and off. But I've been playing around with this feeder, so these fish has had absolutely loads of food at the moment. I am well impressed with it. It does look smart. I'm happy with it. Hopefully Mrs. Whisperer will be happy with it. As you can see, it ain't just raining, it's absolutely hammering down. There's one thing that I have noticed, it's a little bit restricted of how far over I put this feeder. Like, I might end up with having a little bit on the actual block work itself where I've sat it. But I've been trying to do this today in the rain, and you can see it ain't just raining, it is absolutely bucketing it down. With all that being said, I can't even give you an honest review on this feeder yet because I'm testing it out myself. But for what I've seen at the moment, I'm super impressed with this feeder. Amount of fish food, I didn't even weigh it, to be fair. There's a good 4 kilos. I mean, in the small print on the description and on my next future videos after I've had it for a few weeks, I'll give you a little bit more of a review on the actual item itself. But yeah, I'm super happy with the product itself at the moment. It looks quality. It's not a cheap feeder, but what it's capable of doing, feeding 28 times a day with those sort of feeding times where you can have it running for low down as 1 second, and 1 second of food, when I weighed it out, is only coming in at 16 grams. So 1 second of feeding, depending on the fitting underneath, you could even get that down to like 8 grams of feeding if you want to. So 8 grams of fish food is minimal compared to other sort of feeders out there on the market, depending on if you're feeding sinking or floating, different weights. I'm super impressed with it. It was just what I was looking for to go onto this little grow on pond. But like I was saying, there's a few things that I might have to do. Some of them things that I need to do is make a new cover for this pond, and what I might do is just make myself like a custom bit so it falls directly down for when the cover's there. And I might end up getting a few little bits of overspill onto here, And that's purely my fault, down to the fact of where I put this bracket, down to the point of these slabs that I've got, they do overhang a man's 2 inches, do you know what I mean? So I had to sort of sit this back in situ to make sure it was pinned down onto the blockwork itself. I might end up moving that if I do find that some of it flicks out and does sit on here. Couldn't really fit it anywhere else on the pond, because if I fit it over that side, it would get sucked down the skimmer line and all that yibbity yabbada. But overall, for what I've seen at the moment, the quality of the actual feeding regime, the way it looks, the smartness, I'm going to give it a solid 9, I think, to start with, reflecting on the price and everything as well as. But that being said, looks like Mrs. Whisperer's got me a nice cup of tea. Your mother for the cup of tea. But all that said, I am absolutely soaked right through. I look like a drain rat, so I'm going to end the video here. I'll give you a full review in the next couple of weeks when I know that everything about this RS feeder down to a point, because I like to inspect the gate, make sure that I know exactly what I'm talking about before I talk about it. All of the links are down in the comment section if you want to get yourself 10% off and give it a go yourself. That's enough yibbity yabbada. All the links down in the description. If I don't see you in a week, I'll see you for a window. I need to get inside because I am soaked right through. Bosh.